How do you build a company? And I don't just mean the product or the service. I mean the actual human machine that makes everything run. We're talking about organizational structure. Now I know, that might sound like the most boring topic on the planet, but it's secretly one of the most powerful forces out there, shaping success, failure, and even how happy we are at work. So let's pull back the curtain and see how these machines are really built. For decades, if you wanted to see a perfectly effective small team, you'd look at the 13-person U.S. Marine Rifle Squad. I mean, this thing was a masterpiece. It was this perfectly balanced system of a leader and 3 4-person fire teams. One former captain even compared them to world-class dance troupes, where everyone's movement just flows, totally dependent on everyone else. It was considered a flawless piece of design. Because the world changed. The modern battlefield is just flooded with intel from new tech like drones, and that old, perfect structure, it just wasn't built to handle it. So, in the biggest shakeup in 70 years, they completely restructured the squad, adding all these new tech-focused roles. And it's a brilliant lesson, really. Even the most perfect structure has to adapt, or it will die.
And look, this is not just a military problem. The way a company is organized has these huge real-world consequences. It decides how information moves, how decisions get made, and, ultimately, how people feel about coming to work every day.
Just take a look at the online retailer Zappos. They famously decided to switch to a bossless organization. Sounds amazing, right? A dream job. But get this, more than 200 people actually took a severance package and left. Why? Well, it turns out a lot of people are naturally drawn to hierarchy. It gives them a sense of comfort. It cuts down on the stress of uncertainty in a pretty chaotic world. Structure is deeply personal.
Okay, so to really get how these structures are put together, we have to look at the basic building blocks. Think of them like the Lego bricks of any organization. There are a few key ideas that every single leader has to grapple with. First up is this idea of specialization. On an assembly line, right, having each person do just one little thing over and over is incredibly efficient. But, and this is a big but, there's a trade-off. Too much focus on a single tiny task can lead to bored, isolated employees who have no idea how their work fits into the bigger picture. And that's the core tension of the division of labor. Next, every company has to answer a very simple question. Who's the boss? That, right there, is the chain of command. It's that line of authority connecting everyone, from the brand new intern all the way up to the CEO. And in a perfect world, it's crystal clear. You answer to one person, and you know exactly where you fit in. This quote, it's from a survivor of the Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosion, and it shows you just how critical that chain of command really is. When that rig blew up, killing 11 people, it was just pure chaos. One worker sent out a mayday call and was actually chewed out for overstepping her authority. Other people just hesitated, totally unsure if they had permission to act. As one survivor said, nobody was in charge. A broken chain of command can literally have life or death consequences. And finally, where do the big decisions actually get made? In a centralized company, that authority stays right at the top. But in a decentralized one, it's pushed down to the lower levels. The trend lately has been towards decentralization. It's faster, you can be more responsive. The trade-off, though, is a potential loss of control. You might have different parts of the company pulling in totally different directions without that central oversight. All right, so with those building blocks in mind, let's look at the 5 main architectural blueprints that companies use to put it all together. We're going to walk through 5 big ones: the functional, the divisional, the matrix, the team-based, and the virtual network models. And each one offers a totally different way to solve this big puzzle of how to organize people. The 2 most common blueprints you'll see are functional and divisional. A functional structure, think Southwest Airlines, groups people by their expertise. All the marketing folks in one department, all the finance folks in another. It's super efficient. On the other hand, a divisional structure, like at Alphabet, groups people around products or customers. Google's a division, Waymo's another. This makes them way more flexible and responsive, but it also means you're duplicating resources, which can get pretty expensive. But what happens when you try to get cute and combine these 2 models? Well, that brings us to the matrix structure, and a very, very tricky question. Who's your boss? The answer is you have 2 of them.
A matrix structure literally combines the functional and divisional chains of command. So an engineer might report to both the head of engineering and the product manager for the specific project they're on. The whole goal is to get the best of both worlds: deep expertise and nimble focus. The reality? Yeah, it can be super effective, but it can also create a ton of conflicts and confusion for those two boss employees. From the matrix, it's actually a pretty short jump to the team-based approach. Now, this could mean just simple cross-functional teams working on projects together, or you can take it to the absolute extreme. The appliance giant Hire is structured as more than 4,000 self-organizing micro-enterprises. I mean, these are small teams that operate like their own independent businesses with their own profit and loss sheets. It gives them incredible speed and a direct line to the customer. You can actually take this team idea even further, which leads us to our final and maybe most radical model. Think about a company like Nike. Where do you even draw the line of where the company begins and ends? They focus on what they're amazing at, design and marketing, and then they outsource almost all of their manufacturing to a whole network of separate companies. This is what we call the virtual network structure, where the organization is more like a central hub connected to all these outside partners. So, okay, we have all these different blueprints, from rigid hierarchies to these loose, sprawling networks. This brings up the most important question of all. How do you pick the right one? Well, it all comes down to a fundamental trade-off. Are you building for efficiency, or are you building for innovation? So here's the absolute key takeaway. Structure follows strategy. If your company is built for ruthless efficiency, like a fast food chain, you need a rigid, what we call mechanistic system, where everything is predictable. But if your company is trying to invent the future, you need an organic system, one that's loose and flexible enough to adapt to constant change. You can't have both at the same time. And this points to a really fascinating truth about how the work itself shapes the company structure. A researcher named Joan Woodward found that, yeah, assembly lines thrive with a rigid, mechanistic structure. But here's the twist. Both the simplest technology, like making custom one-off goods, and the most complex, like an automated chemical refinery, both work best with flexible, organic structures. And this brings us right back to the human element. These aren't just abstract designs on a whiteboard. They are the environments where we spend a huge chunk of our lives. And finding the right fit is deeply, deeply personal. Let's go all the way back to that number from the beginning. 200. 200 individual people who were offered a chance to work in a bossless paradise and said, no thank you. We already know why they left. For a lot of people, the supposed freedom of an organic system just feels like pure chaos. They actually crave the clarity and the comfort of a hierarchy, where the roles are clearly defined and the path forward is clear. And it's so important to understand that there is no right or wrong answer here. It's just about a fundamental difference in what we need from our work to feel safe and effective. But on the flip side, you've got leaders like Lynn Jurich, the CEO of the solar company Sunrun. Her entire philosophy is built for a collaborative, decentralized world. Her leadership style thrives in one of those organic systems, where influence is way more important than authority. And that's really the final question for you. When you think about the kind of company you want to build, or the one you want to work for, what does it look like? Does it have those clear, comforting lines of a vertical hierarchy, or is it the open, flexible freedom of a horizontal network? The answer says just as much about you as it does about the future of business.